Good afternoon, everyone, and assalamu alaikum. I'm really, it's my pleasure to give such a presentation, and I'm really delighted that there's such an interest in this subject. I have knitted for you a fabric of ideas, okay? We'll start first with some theology and spirituality, because it will form the background that we need for this subject. I won't go too much into it. And then we'll move into some of the technical parts of fasting. And then we'll end with the cultural perspective of Ramadan. So this way, I'm hoping everyone will find something that is of interest to them in this presentation. If some of you attended the cultural orientation, my cultural orientation talk, this is the model of the iceberg. Now, people have used this in studying cultures, and they refer that what we see of the iceberg is just the tip of it, and it's a small part compared to the submerged part of the iceberg that holds the rest of it and where the weight of it. And when we talk about cultures, and we're talking today something of the Islamic culture, there is the observed part. This will cover mostly at the end of the lecture. And then there is the submerged part of the culture. Now, if I limit my talk to the observed part of the culture, it will not provide a complete understanding of the subject. So what I want to do is I want to start with inside information about the Islamic paradigm. And this is what I meant in the title, through the paradigm of a believer. So I want to introduce Ramadan, not by itself in the beginning, but I want to introduce the Islamic worldview that houses the concept, or that houses Ramadan. And then this way, I believe, I will be introducing Ramadan in a way that explains a lot of the questions and a lot of the things that you will see, and will also give some idea about the Islamic paradigm. Okay, so we start with the Islamic paradigm. Now, as a Muslim, God is the center of the universe. He is the sole creator. He is the sustainer of the universe, of everything that we see around us. And there's only one God. He is the God of all faiths, all people. There's only one God. And man is a creation of God like anything else. Now, one of the important things to understand when we talk about Islamic paradigm is the purpose of life. Why did God create man? Now, you might ask, why is this question relevant? We want to talk about Ramadan. I can tell you an analogy. If a student, let's say a very bright student, somebody came to him and he said, okay, I'm going to give you a full 4-year scholarships to your dream university, to Harvard or wherever. You just have to focus and you study. And so that student will make these 4 years, the goal of these 4 years is for him to be an efficient student and a very dedicated student. So his goal will affect everything in his life. Will affect his sleep, will affect what he eats, will affect how many times he sees his parents, where his money goes, everything, because he chose this goal. And we can carry this back to the Islamic paradigm. When God created man and created the universe, He created man and the universe in such a way that it will help man to fulfill the purpose of creation. And Ramadan is one of these things in the Islamic paradigm that helps man to fulfill the purpose of creation. And this is why it's important to know what that purpose is. And so to understand why Ramadan is there to help Muslims fulfill this purpose. Now, one of the things to discuss in this is the nature of man. If God created man in such a way, or he gave him such a purpose, then his nature has to be in such a way that helps him in fulfilling this purpose. Now, God talks in the Quran, talks to man talks to the different elements that makes up the nature of man. There is the physical body, our physical body, and its own physical needs. And then there is the soul, or it is a metaphysical dimension of the human nature. And then there is, God talks to the intellect of man, the intellect which is what gives man the ability to choose what to do and to contemplate about God and to think. And then there is an element called, we call it in Arabic, nafs in the Quran. And this is just a translation for it. God speaks of 3 types of nafs in the Quran. And in terms of this nafs encourages man to do good or to do bad. There are 3 types of hearts. This is not the biological heart. 3 types of hearts in terms of its relationship to God. There's a dead heart, there's a sick heart, and there's a sound heart. Okay, so all of these elements are just listed in there to show also the complexity of human nature. The way we see it in Islam is that man is not just the physical being that we see. There's multi-dimensions of man. And the interplay of all of these is not really quite understood by us. Now, the next one is human existence, the way a Muslim sees human existence. Now, existence for a Muslim spans before birth and goes to eternity. And this is how a Muslim views everything that he does. This life, the physical, the physical life, started with birth, and it will end with death. Excuse me. But when Muslims look at life, we don't see that when we die, this is the end of it. This is just a phase. Then there's another existence here. It's more of a metaphysical existence. It's not a physical existence of the body. And it goes to eternity. So there is a goal for man to achieve in this physical existence. And his achieving this goal or not will affect his state in eternity. Like the student. If he becomes a dedicated student or not, it affects the rest of his life, his career, his everything. And it is the same in Islam for human existence. So we go back to this. We talked about why it's important to know the purpose of creation. And then we talked about human nature, the complexity of it, and what we view as life. Now, what is the purpose? Why did God create man? I don't want to go into the theology too much, so I'm just going to give you the result of the direct answer to the question. God says in the Quran, this is not deduced, it's in the Quran, that God created man, so man chooses to turn towards God with an intimate communion, with reverence, with humble submission. So basically, God created man to know him first, and then to choose to enter this relationship based on love. Not the love of equals, but based on love to his creator. And this love and trust of him will result in humility and in surrendering to his God. So this is basically what in Islam we call it ubudiyya. This relationship of ubudiyya between man and God is also at levels. Everybody that you will see in this country, for example, is at some kind of level in their relationship of love or ubudiyya with God. Okay? And if we remember the nature of man, the interplay, the complexity of man's nature, which nafs this person has, which heart this person has, and all the intellect that person has, and all the interaction between these determines also the level where he is in his ubudiyya, in his relationship with God. And so in this, establishing this relationship ends also in transforming the heart of man from a dead heart to a sound heart. The higher up in the levels a man goes, the higher the transformation of who he is and what he is inside. And so this is the purpose of creation for Muslims. It's being mindful of God. Now, okay, God created man, but also God put man on earth in this universe. He has to interact with everything around him, with people, with environment, animate, inanimate objects, with money, power, all these problems that are happening. So how is man to interact with the universe and still achieve this vertical relationship? So he has to undergo this horizontal, but also this vertical, because the purpose of this has to lead to this. And so the answer to that is also in the Quran. When God created Adam, he said to the angels, I am creating a vicegerent on earth. So man's role here on earth is to uphold God's rules on earth. Now one might ask the question, well, does God need anybody to uphold the rules? No, he doesn't. But why is this the role of man? I want to give you an example. If we look at money, for example, how should man deal with money so that it actually reinforces or transforms his heart and put him up in the level of ubudiyya? Well, if man follows the guidelines that are in the Quran for dealing with money, and there are guidelines for almost everything, and I repeat, they're guidelines, they're not specific details. And so they're guidelines to deal with money. For example, not to steal, not to use usury, not to gamble, to give out for charity, to give out zakah, all kinds of guidelines in the Quran for dealing with money. If man does that, then the end result will be that money will be in man's hand. It will never be in his heart. And so money will always be a means. It will never be a goal. So the heart is left for the love of its Lord. And so this applies to everything in life around Muslims. This is why maybe you've heard the statement before that Islam is not a religion in terms of the definition of a religion, that religion is my spiritual relationship with God. Islam is a way of life. Why it's a way of life? Because applying the rules in all aspects of life actually will help me in fulfilling this relationship and transforming my heart. If I don't apply these, then I am left to transform my heart just like without guidance, without anything. It's just I have to make up ways how to deal with money, how to do that. But then I don't know, I'm blind. How do I reach that? And I have really no clue about my human nature, like God does. And so there are also levels in applications. As there are levels in ubudiyya, mindfulness of God, there's also levels in application of the rules. So you might find somebody who's Muslim, but he might be drinking, or he might be gambling, or so there are levels, depending on the levels in this relationship. So this is basically the purpose of life. Now, if we want to ask about where does Ramadan fit in